Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ Dhammāṃ Sanghaṃ Namasami. It's the half Uposatha, the half moon leading up to the full moon of it'll be the full moon of April. Next week then is the full moon of April on Wednesday, and then I think it's called Chakri on Thursday, which is the establishment of the Thai royal dynasty family, I think, and these will be public holidays and quite busy, I imagine. And then the following week coming soon is Songkran, which is the Thai New Year. So all in all, a few busy days coming up, and this last week has been slightly more busy for me. Not in the worldly context, it probably won't sound like I've done much more than usual to you, but we've had another monk staying for a few days, boosting our number to 6, including our Neem or Samanera novice monk. He's actually lived here for several years, 5 years I think, and been a monk, a Samanera, all that time, and is very well established in his practice and knowledge of the Vinaya. Probably in this tradition and this culture more so than many. He just chooses to be a Samanera rather than ordained fully. This is as I understand it, as I perceive it, and only my own view, because we don't have much in the way of conversation going on here. So we had another monk staying for a few days, which was very nice, but again not to speak to, but to see how a seemingly random, complete stranger can come and live with you for, I don't know whether it was 3 or 4 or maybe longer, 5 days, and then leave and make very little impact, because his behavioral patterns, his way of living was the same as the Ajahns, the 2 Ajahns, my senior monastics living here, the abbot. And the abbot is slightly junior in number of vasas, number of years counted in the robes, to the most senior in vasas, Ajahn here, but only slightly. It's just a choice of roles. Abbot doesn't mean you're the most senior in years as a monk, it's just you're prepared to take on those additional responsibilities. For instance, one of which would be he is kindly organising my own visa and monk ID issues, and he, as abbot, is the only person who can authorise such things. And I would imagine there are many other duties. But this is in terms of Sangha, number of monks, this is a very small community. And up to now, I have stayed in a large community of monks, more than 100, which would include something like 60 to 70 novices, and 30 to ranges in numbers all of the time, but 30 odd bhikkhus from time to time, or on my own, on Tudong, wandering around India. And coming here, it wasn't my intention to stay, but as it happens, I have stayed thus far 3 months, and I'm enjoying living in community, which is not what I expected. Things don't go according to our expectations, which is why, as I've spoken before in a previous video, we should try to have few expectations because expectations are only going to bring about suffering. I'm laughing a little because my expectation was to just sit and talk about something completely different, but I haven't done that at all. So there are my expectations. That's as valuable as they are. We cannot predict the future. Things happen. As I was about to, now I'm wondering if I have, set the camera rolling, start the camera, it decided, probably through largely my own negligence, that it would fall from its position perched on top of the stairway up to the kuti veranda here. It would fall all the way down to the floor, face down onto the concrete. So I thought, well, that's the end of those expectations. I won't be able to sit and talk to you about the gradual path of training, which was what was in my mind, because this camera, this phone, will now surely be in very many pieces. But I picked it up and it seems to be working and more or less intact. So we'll see how that goes. He's gone now, our guest, and he is a forest monk, I can only assume, because he behaved as forest monks do, in our similar pattern, daily schedule, came on arms round as we do each day, and when he came to leave, he left, and whilst he was here, he was here. Nothing changes too much. And we try to be, to some extent, very, not to stir up the waters, muddy the waters, to become a little invisible, be a little bit invisible. As children, we were told that by our grandparents that we were children, we should be seen and not heard. And although that might seem a little unpolitically correct these days, as adults one can apply this principle of being seen, so there you're present, you're available to help, but you don't need to necessarily be heard all of the time, or be seen to be affecting change, but to be seen to be cooperating and going with the pattern of things as they happen. And we often hear this term for Buddhism, path, mentioned. In fact, outside of the context of Buddhism, you'll hear phrases like, well, if only he had taken a different path, or if only she had gone in a different direction. These things all implying we are going somewhere. But of course this is metaphorical. We're not going anywhere. These paths, these directions are associated with little decisions we make that can make no change or huge changes. The aspect of control we have, or effect we have, through all of our actions of body, speech and mind, on the causes and conditions that will affect all outcomes. essentially, this is the basis of dependent origination, karma, cause and effect. This is how we determine our futures, by doing good things now, practicing sila, moral virtue, samadhi, meditation, and panya, mental development, in order to establish foundations, the groundwork, to build a life, a future, on firm footings. Now, along with our guest, the last Saturday, just gone, a little Thai boy came up to my veranda here after the mealtime with his Google Translate in hand on his phone. And I must say, this is a useful thing. I have it also. Very rarely do I need to use it, but there are on rare occasions when one perhaps in the olden days would have got a dictionary out or a phrase book, looked up the words, but now you can ask someone to speak or just type in and quickly get a sentence together that you don't even have to try and pronounce. You can just show or play. And he came up and the translation was, "Come and help build a temple, Tanajan." So I thought, right, okay, I said, just 1 minute, because I was literally cleaning my teeth. I'll be right with you. And he disappeared. I thought, here we go. Now my expectations that morning were to exactly this, sit here and do this, make a short video. So I finished cleaning my teeth and thought, he probably means cleaning, not building, because I couldn't think of, immediately didn't come to mind building any temples. So I went up to the main boat or temple at the top of the hill, mountain here. No one around. So I thought, well, in a way that's quite a relief. It's not cleaning the temple because the weather was very hot. It just got quite hot. We're into the hot season coming up. Songkran is in the hot time of year in Thailand, which is why their tradition at Songkran is to throw water all over each other. But that's another story. So I came back down to this middle level of the mountain, hill, forest, in the forest, and the boy wasn't back at the kuti, so I thought, well, I'll wander down to where the lay people are building a chedi. Now, a chedi is the same as a stupa, or we would call it a monument. So they get built for all kinds of reasons, usually in memoriam or as a memorial to a senior, a well-accomplished, attained Ajahn, monastic, Longpo, monk, whom's died, and the relics, which are the remains from the cremation, are incarcerated in something and put into this monument, which they build most elaborate structures here in Thailand and other Buddhist countries. And they're coming up in other non-Buddhist countries these days too. You've seen them, you know what they are, the big pointy structures. They have a specific and particular design and pattern, but we won't go into that because I don't really know the whole story there. But there's one of these being built, and it's of quite huge proportions, and this is for the relics of Longpo Narong, who was the founder and monk here at this monastery up until 3 or 4 years ago when he died. And they've been building this stupa, this chedi, in a very beautiful position. It's going to be seen from the water, from people travelling to the nearby islands for many miles around, and be quite a notable and beautiful structure. But that aside, I thought I'd walk down there, so down the mountain, and it was getting hotter and hotter, and when I got there, yes, it was all going on, a bit of a building site. And I thought, I haven't even got my, I don't have a hat, but I have a piece of this cloth, which I just make a turban to protect my head from the sun, otherwise it doesn't take long before I really get some sunstroke, especially with this bald head situation. And no language situation again, so I just watch and follow and muck in. It turned out what we were doing, we were laying the foundations. So the structure has been being built for all of this time, years. Concrete piles of steel, and this going into the mountainside, down to the cliffs, down to the water. So it's very, very solid built structure, because it's going to go up a long way. And of course we understand the importance of these foundations, like referring on this path to Sila, Samadhi, Panya, the foundations of our practice. It is a gradual path. We establish these things gradually. Now, this doesn't mean it has to be all slowly, slowly, slowly. I'll come back to that. But it was required of me to help the abbot and the other couple of monks here. We were laying blocks, bricks, and anything that could be found solid on the ground in the base of this, what is going to be the stupa, which will house these relics. I've been to foundation laying Buddhist ceremonies in other countries, which is a case of lighting some incense, offering some flowers, sprinkling some water, and doing some chanting Ratana Sutta and such the like. But here it's very much a case of the monks themselves have to lay the stones. So we were for some 3 hours laying bricks in the midday sun. I did run back at the break time. We had 10 minutes every so often to have some water and stand in the shade and get my cloth. And I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed it, actually. I'm not complaining. It was very, I'm quite used to physical work like that. And when you're not doing it for a living, it's quite enjoyable. Yes, we laid the foundations to this, what will be a beautiful structure, a chedi, a stupa on top of it. Now this is of course not for the monks' benefit, or it's not a necessary part of the practice, but it's very much a necessary part of the lay people's development of dana and giving, and service dana, working to provide something out of respect for their former teacher, for having left this beautiful place for them to continue to visit for many generations ahead. This land, this piece of mountain was given to him by a former member of the royal family, and this was some long time ago. And it is here and will stay here now for generations to come. The establishment of the foundations there is considered very important. I mean, the bricks are all painted with gold leaf on one side, even though they're going to be buried under more and more concrete. Although nobody was telling me, I thought, well, I'm going to lay these bricks very neatly, as if laying block paving. Of course, they're going to be just there as hardcore. But I think that attracted, that caused them to think, well, he's the best one for that then, because I was then laying them all neatly, and they were passing the bricks. So I picked what is the expression? Created a rod for my own back a little there, with my OCD-ness of lining things up neatly, but I enjoyed it anyway, and it was a satisfying work. And we had some ice cream and cold soda before 12 o'clock, the ice cream, but cold soda thereafter to keep us going. Now, this gradual path, there's a simile often used in various traditions, different traditions, of a mountain And at its peak, the peak of this mountain represents Nibbāna, or nirvana, or enlightenment, or whatever it is you're going to try and achieve. And this often is applied in many other aspects of life, this same simile. And there are different ways to approach getting to this peak, to, in our case, Nibbāna, freedom from suffering, and freedom from the shackles, the ties of rebirth. Now, you can go straight to the top. This is the difficult way. Or you could take the zigzaggy, winding road you often see on mountains going to the top. And one can sometimes consider lay life and this practice of Buddhism and this following of the path, in our case this Noble Eightfold Path of right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness and right meditation, as being best done in lay life as taking the little road, rising gradually, but eventually getting to the top. For this is the most practical and sensible way to achieve your goal of reaching the summit, the peak, and the safest way. Or you can choose to renounce, so taking one of the 10 PARAMI, which are the perfections in life, that we can perfect over many lifetimes, maybe only one PARAMI in a lifetime, or maybe a few, or maybe none. But take one of them, nekkhamma, which is renunciation, and give everything up as our worldly life. Leave it behind: families, money, jobs, houses, cars, holidays, clothes, name, hair. Become a monk or a nun. Go and join a monastery. You could join a city monastery, or you could join a forest monastery. It doesn't matter. Different traditions. You're still going to be taking on 227 precepts. As lay people, there are 5: no killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying, or taking intoxicants. If you want to, as a lay person, live in a monastery, that turns into 8. So number 3 is no sexual activity whatsoever. And then they add on no eating after midday, which is the same for monastics all of the time, but for lay people just whilst they're staying in the monastery. No entertainment, so this is watching videos, music, singing, dancing, films, TV, and no wearing of jewellery and perfumes and makeup. And number 8 is sleeping in a high or luxurious comfortable bed. So this is living as a layperson in the monastery. But then when one becomes a samanera, you take on, in fact, one of those precepts, number 7, and number 7 divides into 2. So it's no entertainment, and then it's no beautification, perfume, jewellery, malas, etc. And also that makes number 8 number 9, and then number 10 is no money. You give up money. So a samanera has no money, and he lives on 10 precepts, as do the meitchis that live here in the monastery. They live on 10 precepts. But then when you take full ordination, a nun would take 311 precepts. The monastics are 227 precepts. So we are bhikkhus, and our sila is 227 precepts. Now, primarily included in those 227 are the 5 precepts and the 8 and the 10. So all 10 precepts are included within there. And this is called the Patimokkha, which we recite every Uposatha, full moon and new moon. But in addition to that, there is the entire Vinaya, which is all of the different codes and rules of monastic life, which is what, for instance, when a monk who's staying here recently, this guest who was visiting us, in terms of his overall behavior and the way he's sticking to the schedule of the day, how we do things, what we eat, when we eat, how we wash our bowls, how we wash our robes, all of this. He would be doing that the same as us, even though he's a complete stranger and may have come from any distance or even a different country, like me here. But we all do things the same way from that Vinaya. That's aside and in addition to these 227 rules. The 227, the Patimokkha, mainly apply to the supportive conditions for us really keeping those 10 precepts. And they ensure that we are not putting ourselves in situations whereby we can be tempted or seen to be tempted or open to temptation from others or ourselves. So they're really just reinforcement. They're not really extra things. And I'm not a big one on learning things to recite, because I think it's better to understand things. But I did make what we call an adhitthana, adhittan, they say here, which is another part of the 10 parami, adhitthana, and means determination or commitment. I made, rather rashly I think, on the spur of the moment, with my enthusiasm of laying blocks and the hot sun getting to me, I made this adhitthana to learn the Patimokkha by the end of this coming Vasa, which is, I think, about 215 days away. So I'm not sure I'm going to manage it, because I've so far in 3 days only learnt about 3 lines. It's achievable, but it can take people years. So maybe it'll be the following Vasa. But when I kind of backtracked and said that, he said, no, you've made, well, he didn't say, he sign languaged, adhitthana, you've said it now. So I've been getting my head down to that, but firstly, because I want to really thoroughly understand it, I wanted to write it all out in the Pali, which is how we recite it on these occasions. We're not allowed to read it. Somebody has to recite it from start to finish. It takes about 40 minutes, the whole 227 rules. The abbot here normally does it. And it's said quite quickly, but it has to be absolutely correct. There's usually 2 monks reading it, and if you get one word or syllable out of place, they correct you, and you go back a line and carry on. So it's very important that somebody always knows it. So this to me was not only adhitthana, it's dana, it's giving something, because it's useful to have more than one person that can do this. And as there are only 4 bhikkhus here, it would be useful. It's also more renunciation, because I'm having to give up other things I could be doing. So sometimes I'd like to sit and read or listen to a Dharma talk or even just meditate. So some of that time I will now have to give up and spend learning the recitation of the Patimokkha. And what I'm getting to here is we're given this situation in monastic life to increase the speed, escalate, or reach that peak, the summit, the top of the mountain more quickly by climbing straight up the north face. So in lay life, taking this road nice and slowly, we can do that. We can attain to Nibbāna by keeping sila, practicing meditation and developing the mind. If we want to get there in this lifetime, become free from suffering in this lifetime and free from rebirth, then one can ordain, become a monk. You're then automatically perfecting a lot of those 10 PARAMI, perfections, by renunciation, dana, giving, sila, increasing your precepts. These are all part of these 10 PARAMIs. And you are making a determination to just concentrate this lifetime on this practice, so an adhitthana. This is with the aim of getting there via the straight route. Now, this isn't without its risks, of course, because if one is not careful, if one takes on too much, you can fall back. And as you know, if you're climbing a mountain and you're not on the nice windy road, you're going to fall a long way. And people on the nice and windy road could easily be overtaking you. It's like the story of the hare and the tortoise, if you know that. So, what one must understand, it isn't a rushed approach, taking a shortcut, a fast track to the top. And this can apply to any part of your life, as well as monasticism and Buddhism. This could apply to your business life. There are always fast tracks to the top. But one has to approach the fast route more carefully. If you're climbing a mountain, the north face, the direct route to success, to achieving your goal, then you must take extra protection, grappling irons, lots of ropes to hold you in place. And what this is your sila. This is also the monastic environment you engulf yourself in, you immerse yourself in, you put your life into. Now you can go straight out on Tudong, walking like I did in India, but it was causing me to go forward and trip back a little, forward, trip back a little, because there were occasions where one would be immersed or come out of your immersion of this monk's life into the world where you're having to face and deal with worldly obstacles like transportation, immigration offices, airports, bus terminals, and getting food when it wasn't being offered, for instance. These things that slow you down. And what I've come to learn to appreciate with community life is, as nice as this Tudong and seemingly free-natured, free-spirited approach to the path going nowhere, is very nice, very romantic, you do need this support, these grappling irons and these safety ropes if you want to climb the north face. But there is also a little cost, you have to give a bit back. And this all comes from the Buddha's teachings, these 10 PARAMI. So for me, this little adhitthana to learn the Patimokkha is a very small sacrifice. And it also helps to free my thinking by giving it, it's no different to using the mantra Bhutto, Bhutto, Bhutto. I take one line of the Patimokkha and I take it with me on arms round in the morning, in my head. And I repeat it as if I would repeat Bhutto, 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 Bhutto. 1 mile there, Bhutto, 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 1 mile back. But not Bhutto, Bhutto, Bhutto. It would be whatever the line is. I can't off the top of my head think of an example. This steadily, gradually, but surely, I hope, will help me to, I know the rules, not in a recitation format. I know if I was going to break one and know how not to break one. But this will help me learn to recite them in the Pali language in the formal fashion that we are expected to know. It's part of a rite of passage here in this tradition, in this country also. So it is out of respect to my senior monks and teachers here. So this got me thinking about this gradual path or the quick path, and I thought it's better described as a gentle path. Like we have gentleman or gentlewoman, don't really have that so much as that's only a language issue, but the idea of gentleness is really what Buddhism encompasses. Through sila, through being kind to ourselves and to others, through no harm. Through meditation, which should not be an austere, ascetic, torturous practice. It should be a settling, relaxing, or settling and letting go in order that your body can relax. Settling and letting go in order that your mind can become calm. Just sitting and watching the breath, one thing, a meditation object, or chanting a mantra, or one line of something you are learning. This is a very gentle approach to sharpening the abilities of the mind, the thinking mind, to keep its attention, keep its focus on one thing. And this is developing mindfulness, or vipassana, seeing clearly, as well as developing single-pointed, focused. I'm avoiding the word concentration, because concentration implies this straining, this effort, which is misguided. Just simply settle and watch. Your focus will always come into be naturally on what is necessary. You don't need to strain. And this development of samadhi, this development of vipassana, is what is required for us to attain our ultimate goal of nibbāna, freedom from suffering in this lifetime, freedom from rebirth into this repetitive cycle of aging, sickness and death, suffering. So it is a gentle path, a gentle approach. Similarly speaking, we're going along our zigzag road up the mountain gently. But also, if we're going to take the direct fast route, even with grappling irons and ropes and the protection, or in real terms, the renunciation of becoming a monk, shaving one's head and living in a monastery, to surely just focus on meditation, developing wisdom and keeping sila, is the fast route there. But you have to approach it carefully, gently. Otherwise you will still fall off a ledge and right back down to the bottom very easily. So it isn't the easy route. It isn't a shortcut that is easy and quick to attain to nibbāna without increased mindfulness, increased care and attention, increased gentleness. That gentleness is the important thing to remember. Now I'm in the forest, jungle really. Forests are like Sherwood Forest, which, as dangerous as that got, was some few hundred years ago when Dick Turpin was running around. Or was that Robin Hood? I don't know, highwaymen of their time, robbers with bow and arrows. Here is jungle. There are all kinds of creatures. In my very roof here, roof space, I've got dozens, I think, of rats. They're not the big city rats, the black, greasy, beady-eyed little big things like this that I'm used to in Bangalore, India, because those, as unapproachable as they looked and very hard to like, would, as soon as they saw you, would disappear like that, gone. Here, these jungle rats are smaller, and they're more attractive. They're a browny coat with lighter colourings, but very ratty tails and faces. But they just look at you with their beady eyes. And they're not, like all of the creatures in this beautiful place, they're used to, after decades and decades of people living here who do no harm, of being safe. They don't run away, they don't hide. So they're all living in my roof space. There is a 3mm, 4mm layer of thin cardboard, plasterboard, something, between them and me at night, just a few feet away from my face. And below this decking wood is where the geckos kind of live. And in all the space between, there is a war going on between rats and geckos. The geckos go up there, the rats go down there, and terrible activity goes on in the night sometimes. What was I talking about? Oh, but one has to accept that this was going on long before I was here. This is nature. And if you approach it gently, by just asking them to please kindly keep the noise down, maybe just turn a light on, usually quiet. So I have a little torch which is rechargeable, and I just turn that on, and they quieten down. But I think if you were to start rampaging around and shouting or screaming, then they would be scared, you would be scared. It wouldn't work. Just walking to the coffee shed, the little refreshments shed we'll call it, NIBBÄNA place, I'm not sure of the proper name for it now. Anyway, the other morning in the dark, had this little torch, fortunately. It's only a cheap little plastic thing, but there was an anaconda as long as this veranda. I'm not exaggerating. And this round, the biggest thing I've ever seen of its kind. And I was very close to it before I really noticed it. And then it just looked at me with its yellow eyes, and I looked back and slowly walked and went a different direction. There is a video on here, a short. It's not very clear, it was dark, but you can see this creature, and it's not zoomed in. I was that close, and you can just about see, I think, the size of it. Beautiful, beautiful, but I think quite a dangerous. I don't know anything about anacondas, but I've only found out that's what it was after the event. The biggest snake you can get here and anywhere, I think. Very big thing. And these things in the forest and these conditions where we live as monks are, the forest is here, it protects us. It's protecting me now from the sun. It's in the hot season. If I was out down on the beach area there in the sun, it would be way too hot to be sitting outside talking to you like this. I'm shielded by trees, bamboos, and out of the sun it's relatively cool. But as the heat temperature rises, more insects, biting things, creatures, ants start to thrive, and there is discomfort. But we treat it gently. We don't run away, we don't run to. We practice, we develop equanimity, upekkha. This is another of the 10 parami, another perfection in our lives. Through these seeming obstacles, we look at each one as a teacher. The rats fighting with the geckos last night, the war going on in my kuti, was teaching me that not everybody is living in peace and harmony, neither in the world of, well, all beings, neither in the world of the forest creatures, jungle creatures, or human world. And this is the nature of existence, one of the aspects of existence, dukkha, suffering, unsatisfactoriness. And this is part of what we're trying to understand, part of the wisdom, panya, that we're trying to develop. And panya, wisdom, is another of the 10 PARAMI. So all of these 10 perfections in life can be seen not only in monastic life, but in your own lives, in lay life. But when you're on the road, zigzaggy road going up the mountain, often your attention is in the vehicle you're driving and the road ahead. And you may miss some of the valuable teachings that you are more exposed to when you're climbing the rock face straight to the top. So neither way is better than the other. Neither way is guaranteed to get there first. Back to the story of the hare and the tortoise. If you don't know it, you can just Google story of hare and tortoise. I'm not going to repeat it. But we're all different. We require different ways of achieving things. We're all, however, following the same Noble Eightfold Path and developing our wisdom to understand these same Four Noble Truths of suffering, the cause of suffering, an end of suffering, and this path, the Noble Eightfold Path, leading to the end of suffering. The path is Sila, Samadhi, Panya. And this wisdom we're developing is the understanding of impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and that we are not what causes and conditions have given us the perception to believe we are. That is anicca, dukkha, anatta, impermanence, unsatisfactoriness or suffering, and not self, or out of our control. Because we are, these people, we are only the result of the causes and conditions that have caused these conditions of what we perceive to be ourselves to arise. I am to some extent responsible for the causes and conditions, having placed myself through going forth, renouncing worldly life and entering into a monastic life. But thereafter, I'm at the it's at the will of others, really, in the Sangha, as to where I am determined to go and be. And I'm fortunate that I have ended up in this environment here, where it is working very well to help me establish my practice firmly on these firm foundations of Sila. And I'm putting great emphasis on understanding, or the effort to learn this Patimokkha in terms of recitation form, because I think it really does reinforce in that determination, that adhitthana, does reinforce in me a commitment to this community, and a commitment of faith. And faith, sada, is another of these 10 PARAMI, sada. And faith is not necessarily like blind faith or belief, because in Buddhism we are not required to believe. We are required, or not even required, we can experientially, through trying, through the teachings of the Buddha, try for ourselves and experience the results and see for ourselves, rather than believe. But you need the confidence in the teachings to follow those instructions. Now, there's no better way of building the confidence in the teachings than to try. And when you try and it works, you'll keep going one stage further, one stage further, one stage further. I didn't start off with any intentions even close towards ever becoming a monk. I started with meditation, it led to Buddhism, which led to development of the the three aspects of morality and meditation, and then mental development, which then led me towards a little bit more renunciation, so from 5 precepts to 8 precepts, and then thinking, well, you know, you could go and live in a monastery, or you could just try living on 10 precepts outside of a monastery, and so on and so forth. It went this way, progressively, gradually, but gently on that path. Now, I think I've spoken for longer than I certainly have spoken for longer than I expected to. I do run into some technical issues if these videos go on for longer than 40 minutes. Normally, I'm fortunate that my talking does finish after about 40 minutes, but this time again I think I've gone over. I've yet to ever remember to, well, I don't really have another clock to use, so I only know when I finished. But I will leave that those little reflections of mine with you for your consideration if you wish, or just to be put away, ignored, if not. It's up to you. But thank you for watching, and goodbye.